Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast. Do you realize that 70% of people are disengaged at work? I don't think it's an overstatement to call that a tragedy, actually, because it affects the bottom lines of organizations, certainly, but it has a negative impact on all the people that work there, and their families, and the community at large. Nobody's talking about this. Well, on this podcast, we are going to talk about it. So welcome to the John Harrison Podcast, and we're doing something different today. We've got a video version of the podcast, and just so excited today because I've got a good friend of mine, John Fry, who actually is outside of London in England, joining us. So our first global guest on the John Harrison Podcast. Just amazing growth in this episode. But I met John through business, a client in England, and he and I got to know each other. And as I just love when this happens, but now just very, very close friends. And started off with business, has transformed into something different than that. But do want to talk about workplace culture today for sure. But John, if you could just tell us a little bit of your professional background, how we met, all that kind of thing.
I met John. I was working at Cab Seating and probably about 4.5 years ago now. So John was invited over to do some training on values-based leadership. And I was the plant manager at the time. And I was working for a guy, Mike Pritchard. He was our vice president of European operations. And I'd had quite a busy day. It was quite a busy week, in fact. And I knew I was booked to go on this values-based leadership course, and John was running it. And I said, Mike, look, do I really, really have to go on this course because I've got a lot of work? He said, yes, you've got to go on it. So I thought, okay, this is 2 days of my life that I might never get back. But okay, I'm with it. I'll go. So I went on the course, and to be fair, is that when I first met John, I was sitting in a classroom of others, and John was, and for those who know him, or even those who don't and listen to the podcast, but he's a very engaging sort of guy. You can listen to John, and actually he's one of these guys who, when you listen to, you sit up and take note. And I think over the course of the 2 days, suddenly I think the thing about the values-based leadership was it wasn't rocket science. There was nothing in there that I felt, it was not telling me personally anything that I didn't know. What it did do, it brought home that some of the things that what I was doing, I felt were the right thing to do. And from a values-based leadership, I thought that, how to put it, is that it was the delivery of the course, the delivery of the content that made people believe in what was being delivered. And I know, and I can say this, I'm not talking because John's here today or whatever, and because we're really good friends now. But the content of the course, it had a lot of people, certainly even after the first day, had a lot of people talking about the content and what a good course it was. And I can honestly say a lot of people said that of all the courses that they've been on and coaching and mentoring and things, that this really struck a chord. I think that the key to it is that John had been there and done it. So when he stood up and said, look, this is how I did it, and I was quite successful at it, and I built, my career around this sort of thing, and now I want to give something back. I think it made people sit up and listen. I know I certainly did, and I know, as I said, there was obviously some learning from it, but it re-emphasized all the things that I was doing, and it was almost like an ego boost, because I felt that when you are in business, sometimes it's very easy to doubt yourself and doubt your own abilities. And when somebody's standing in front of you telling you, do you know what, I did this and I was quite successful at it, and I think this is the right thing to do. When you look and reflect on it, if you're doing those sort of things, I think it's pretty good.
Appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words. Now, I hope you heard me say about 50 times in that session that of all the mistakes I had made, and that a lot of the curriculum came from either seeing dysfunctional leadership or not knowing what to do when I first started. So I appreciate that. But I think sometimes, especially when I'm working with manufacturing clients, I talk about that course as preventative maintenance, right? So in manufacturing, we obviously shut down machinery and vehicles, and we do preventative maintenance, even though it takes time away from actual productivity, but we know it's better for the long haul to do those things. No different than doing preventative maintenance on your vehicle, your car. So yes, I think we don't even profess that what we teach is all these new trendy concepts, but we all sometimes need to be reminded of that. So, but let's be real with each other here, because I came in obviously not only in a class that maybe people didn't want to attend because they were too busy, but then an American guy walks in and they might think, oh my God, this can't get any worse, right? But from all joking aside, why do you think what I was speaking about, not about me personally, but why do you think, and you've said this a little bit, maybe because I had been there, done that, but why even from, could have been American, British culture that could have clashed a little bit. What do you think happened in that room, so to speak, that people went, I don't really care where this guy's from or where this content came from?
I know that you think you place a lot of emphasis on the not the divide, it's not the right word, but the certainly the culture and the way things are in the US to the UK. Certainly your sense of humour is questionable, but just kidding.
You mean the whole country, not mine personally?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, we know that we've got a similar sense of humour. I think we were separated at birth on humour, but I think the thing is that the people who are sitting there, I think just the content just struck a chord. I think because certainly like the company that you'd work with was certainly a company that we were actually working with anyway, and I think also, certainly from CVG perspective, we were quite used to having American people around because we're an American-owned company. But not only that, for me, and I think certainly the others, the key to it was definitely the delivery. It was the engagement. It was I don't think there was such a big divide. The thing I would say is it was interesting that when you were using examples of people, I know we spoke about it in the past when you've used people and said, look, I'm thinking of using, maybe, this person as an example of what to do or what not to do. And we spoke about, well, if it was in England, I would probably look at maybe a Boris Johnson or a Winston Churchill.
Yes.
So I think it's tailoring to suit the audience. And I think you did that very well in terms of recognizing that maybe what you was imparting was values-based leadership and the way you saw it. And I don't think there's any divide between cultures in that respect.
That's true.
I think it was the examples, and I think having done your homework on what examples should I use and what would a UK audience glean. I think that sent a message out quite clearly to people that they accepted and just understood that you understood them.
Okay, thanks for that. I like that. So we talked about humor. Yes, we maybe were separated at birth in terms of humor and the things that when we first started talking about television shows that we liked and all that. But I used humor in the workplace a lot, still try to do that. I know you have. And there's some people that shy away from humor in the workplace because maybe, it's not dignified or not professional. And of course, humor can go too far and it can become divisive or could hurt people's feelings and all those kinds of things. But where have you seen that? Where have you seen humor help, especially in a leadership role when, times are difficult, whatever? Where have you seen humor kind of benefit the whole situation?
So I think for starters, I think you either are humorous or you're not. I don't think it's something that you teach or learn, or I think if it's in your makeup to sometimes make light of the situation, I think it's just in your makeup. I don't think it's something that can be taught. And you're quite right that
maybe not to force it.
Yeah, exactly that. That some people can tell a joke and some people can't tell a joke. It's the same thing. But I also think that when you try and make light of the situation or create or recognize that, it might be serious, but hey guys, it's not life or death. Sometimes I think that to those who do that, it's a natural reaction. I don't think it's a forced reaction. I think, and I think it's just a character trait, I feel. But if you talk about in leadership, I know great leaders who probably have got, their bones are dry. They would never crack a joke. They would never tell a joke, but you still have that utmost respect for them as people, just because they don't have humor in them. But likewise, I've known other guys within industry, and I have exactly the same amount of respect for, and utmost respect for, who do have a humorous side to them. and yet it can go wrong. It's really funny because you were talking about that, and I think it's very important to read a situation as well.
Yes.
And to read your audience. So we had a new boss, and he looked like one of the Muppets. And I don't know, they got like big hair and big beard.
Yes.
Well, so, and of course, a couple of the guys got together and we had to do a presentation. And we thought, well, it'd be funny if we just broke the ice with this guy and show a presentation and put up an organisation chart. And we had him at the top of the organisation chart as this Muppet. But of course, we thought, well, we can't just do that and single him out. So there was other people within the business and the other managers and things. We just put caricatures, and they were all Muppets. And you could actually see. So, like, for example, I've got quite a pronounced nose. So, of course, I was Gonzo.
Gotcha.
After out of the Muppets.
Somebody was Elmo, somebody, yes.
All this sort of thing, yeah. So, of course, we started the presentation. We did an introduction. We said, oh, by the way, this is the team. And, of course, and it was just
nothing.
Stone, just nothing. So, quickly moved on. And you could see people sitting around the table looking at each other thinking, that didn't work.
That sounds like an episode of The Office, basically.
It could well be. But like, I just remember thinking, and if you take a positive from a negative, the thing was that was a very good learning point in terms of, get to know your audience before you decide to embark on make an icebreaker out of some humor.
That's a great example of not a career-ending move, but in hindsight, probably should have gotten to know this person before that. And I've got a similar story that ended up working out okay. But so the first plant that I managed in North Carolina, we made final drive components for Caterpillar equipment, but we also sold them to OEMs. So other businesses were buying these components. And we had a kind of a third-party sales group they did the selling. So they would be out talking to different OEMs around the United States and sell our product. But anyway, once or twice a year, they would come to North Carolina where I was, and they would give a kind of a presentation from their perspective, what their company was working on, how they were trying to sell more of our products, and then what we could do for them, et cetera. But when they would come, they had the highest tech. This was 20 years ago, whatever, 30 years ago. But they had very high tech presentations and music, and I mean, just really high end. And of course, we were a little manufacturing facility, and we basically had an overhead projector, and nothing high tech. So, but I had met with these folks a few times, and always amazed at their high tech. So the third time they came to meet, I said, well, I want you to be impressed. I said, we've taken your lead, and we've got some higher tech abilities now to our presentation that we're going to give you, because we gave them a state of the factory presentation. So I'd borrowed one of my daughter's puppets, and it was Clifford the big red dog, and it was a Clifford puppet. But I really built this thing up like we were going to have this high-tech video display type of thing, and then I pulled out this puppet and started talking, with the puppet. Now, thankfully, it went over well, right? But I remember my team the night before was saying, "Are you sure you're going to do that?" And I went, I think these guys, they'll like it, they'll laugh. And they did, and it was a story that was told, over the years. But exactly, like, that could have not gone very well at all. And of course, I didn't belabor it. I did it just for a couple minutes. But it's hard because we assume everyone has the same sense of humor. Sarcasm can be hilarious, but it can also be hurtful. And I think you're right, John. I think we can respect, not everyone is a comedian. Not everyone needs to bring humor to the workplace. And if they try too hard, it usually bombs, like you just, gave a different example of something bombing. But I think we also need to be comfortable that, and I love what you said, this isn't life or death. And 99% of things that happen in the workplace, especially in offices and factories, is not life or death. And we can take things so seriously that but sometimes just even laughing at ourselves. You and I have told stories where we've done silly things, and we spent, a lot of time in London recently last summer, and our wives were also telling stories of silly things that you and I had done, I think. But sometimes just laughing at ourselves as a leader shows the team that we're human And so I don't know that, I think that
Yeah.
that was well said.
I think from a humour perspective, I think inclusion is a real key to it. If you're going to make a point of making a humorous point, or if you want to be light about it, it's important to include people on the joke. It's important to include people in that mix, because I'm sure you know yourself is that you walk into a room where there's been a joke told or there's been something, and you're not party to that. Unless somebody tells you about it, you feel left out of the loop. You feel as if you're not part of that team, that group. And as I said, I think a lot of the time with people, it comes naturally to a lot of people anyway. But when I was at CBG, I was used to standing up every month and talking to 400 people, with a microphone. You know yourself, John. I don't shy away from the sound of my own voice.
That's correct.
So, but but I'm quite conscious. I know that. But the thing is that you can be delivering a message, of a tale of woe of the business has not particularly performed particularly well this month or whatever. But by the way, guys, there are other things to this, and we're going to do. And it's just about engagement. And people like to laugh as well, and people like to feel light, and people like to feel that it's not all one way. It's not always bad news. There is some light at the end of some tunnels, and I think it's very good. I think it's important to just engage with people and not even crack jokes, but just be light about things and make people feel that not everything that's done here is just for the sole purpose of the business. Right. It's all about accepting them as people, and that all the efforts that they put in are appreciated.
And I think, John, what you're saying is, even if it hasn't been a good month, good quarter, people still generally put in a lot of effort, and we have to remind them of that and thank them for that. And with that, I maybe just kind of close here. But you kind of got me to think here. You and I have been around the block a little bit. We've been in business for a long time. We've led a lot of people. For a new leader, somebody in their 20s that is now taking on their first leadership role, what would you look back now, like if you said, man, when I was 25 or 30 years old, I wish I would have known then what I know now. What would you have done differently when you were kind of coming up to the ranks as a young leader? What comes to mind of, and maybe, because you said it a little bit just a minute ago, maybe, hey, we're going to get through these things and it's not life or death, and maybe we stress too much about some things, but what advice would you give to a young leader?
Well, it's funny because it's a good question, and it's one, when I think back to my time with Land Rover, when I was probably ambitious, I suppose. I wanted to do the next step in management. Everything was all about perceptions and how I was perceived, and it was all about results driven. And and you were still part of the team, but your efforts were geared towards how many engines can I make? What's the quality like? What I found the real big stepping point, or the turning point in my career, was actually engaging with the people themselves. So when I became a production manager for the first time, initially it was all about, look, guys, we've got to get everybody together. You talk to them all and say, guys, we've got to get this, or girls, we've got to get these engines out. We've got to get the quality right. And eventually I got to a point where every morning I walked the production line and said hello to every single person along that production line, to the point where some guys and girls didn't want to engage. Yeah. Other guys and girls would say, my dog's not been very well, or, and you'd stay and getting to know people on a personal level and engaging with people. I found that you got more out of them, and I felt then that they didn't feel they were coming to work necessarily to do work and take the money home or do work for the business. They were doing it for you almost, because you were engaging with them and you were interested in what they had to offer, and therefore what they had to offer was something positive. So, and I felt that as a manager, I think I wish I'd have taken that step earlier and got to know people that reported. A lot of people reported. I wish I'd got to know them sooner and done that sooner.
I love that. And you've heard me talk about passion like water in a bottle, right? Like there is downward pressure on our passions at work because of deadlines and machinery breakdowns and technology issues and customer changes. And I think, John, a lot of people in leadership are so results driven that their first inclination is chatting with everybody at the beginning of the day means we'll get less done, because that's taking time away from productivity. But what you did when you made your walk, and like you said, some people respond to it, some people don't. But I think you were putting water back in lots of people's bottles, because if they did tell you that their dog was not well, and you talked to them about that for a few minutes, or their child playing football, or the movie they saw over the weekend, whatever. If you just put water back in 400 people's bottles, then you are going to get more done, as you said. But we miss that so much, and so I love that lesson. And I think when we're young, especially, we are thinking results and numbers, and we can miss that. And frankly, I'm just going to end here, because when I got sent to, so the company that I worked with when I met John was a U.S.-based company, and John mentioned that, and they had locations all over the world, and I went to most of all of their locations in the U.S. and outside. And of course, not once was I thinking, well, on one of these stops, I'm going to meet somebody that will become like a brother to me. And that happened here. So I think that's the other thing, that to not lose that, like the work is work, and it's not fun a lot of the times, but it's a chance to make a connection that might last a lifetime. And so that happened with us, and I'm thankful for that, and thankful that you joined us today to be on this. And I'd like to tell you that there'll be millions of people listening to this, but that may not be true. But maybe this episode will be the one that kind of causes that to happen, because you're so engaging. But seriously, all joking aside, thanks for being a supporter of mine and our little company here and our mission, and thanks for living it out, because I know you do. And it's just been an honor to hang out with you, because you and I get to do this a fair amount, but now other people are getting to see you, and that's worth it for me. So thank you so much.
You're more than welcome, John. And like I said, I wrote it down here. I says, if anybody asks me who John Harrison is, I said, he's the guy I go to when my dad's not available.
But how old is your father, by the way?
He's 74.
Okay, well, we'll just leave that there then, because that makes me sad a little bit. But no, thank you so much. Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions or thoughts about today's episode, or even ideas for a future episode, you can contact us through our website at johnharrisonvip.com, or follow us on any of our social media platforms.